Students, in this session we will learn about Ammocoete larva and its significance. Ammocoete is a larva of Petromyzon. So you should recollect that while discussing the classification of chordates, we said it is divided into two divisions. One is agnatha and gnathostomata. Agnathans are the ones without jaws, and gnathostomatans includes all the vertebrates with jaws. So here Ammocoete larva falls like it is a larva of Petromyzon, and Petromyzon falls under, it comes under Cyclostomata, which is a agnathan. So as you all know, Cyclostomata means circular mouth bearing organisms. So the best examples of these cyclostomatans are the Petromyzon and Myxin. Now, why this Ammocoete larva is so important, why we need to study in detail, you will understand by the end of this session. So here we will try to learn how these Ammocoete larva is formed and what is its structure and how it metamorphoses into an adult Petromyzon. This is very interesting when compared to all other larval forms, and I hope you enjoyed this session. So as we said, Ammocoete is a larva of Petromyzon, and in Petromyzon the sexes are separate. The differentiation of gonads takes place quite lately, and in Ammocoete larva it has an hermaphroditic gonad which contains both oocyte and the spermatocytes. So at sexual maturity, a single large gonad fills most of the abdominal cavity and there is no genital duct here. So the mature eggs or the sperm, they escape from gonad into the coelom and it passes through the genital pores into the urinogenital sinus and leave the body through this urinogenital opening into the surrounding water. So in early spring or summer, these lampreys, what are lampreys? They are the common name for Petromyzon. They become sexually mature and they migrate into neighboring fresh water or river for breeding. This you should remember. The Petromyzons are ocean dwelling cyclostomes. They live in saline water and they move to fresh water or river for breeding purpose. So they migrate from ocean to the sea. So once they move, they perform a very interesting and unusual kind of behavior wherein with the help of their buccal funnels, we said they are circular mouthed organisms, right? So with the help of their buccal funnels, the males, they move pebbles. Pebbles means small stones from a sandy bottom and they form a nest. Nest means in the form of a shallow rounded depression or a pit. Okay. So when a female attaches to a stone in the nest, this male winds his tail around the female and then the eggs and the sperms are discharged into that pit. Now this shallow pit which is made by one pair, this can be used by many pairs to spawn. Okay, like many Petromyzons can use that nest for the purpose of spawning. Now once the gametes are released, fertilization is obviously external because the gametes has been released into the external environment which is taking place in water. And guess what? A large female sea lamprey, it can lay up to 236,000 eggs. It's so interesting. I again repeat the number. They lay up to 236,000 eggs. That is the egg laying ability of these lampreys. So once the eggs are laid, they are telolecithal types having a good amount of yolk in it. Cleavage is holoblastic, unequal. Then gastrulation takes place by the process of invagination. Then blastopore formation takes place, which in turn gets converted into anus, and then development of nervous system takes place. And here the development of nervous system in this Ammocoete larva is very unique, in which it develops in the form of a solid card or a keel, and then it forms a hollow cavity inside, and this type of formation of central nervous system is called as thickened keel method. Okay, this is one more unique feature of this Ammocoete larva, or in lampreys. Now let us learn the structure of, with this introduction, let us focus on the structure of Ammocoete larva, how it looks like or what are its features, and followed by how it metamorphosizes into an adult, its process of metamorphosis, and what is the significance of this Ammocoete larva. Now when you look at the structure of an Ammocoete larva, here we said fertilization is external, and once the fertilization occurs, the eggs will hatch in about 3 weeks. They form a very minute transparent larva called as Ammocoete, and this larva, they measure about 1 centimeter in length and they will be transparent. Earlier, this larva, when they hatch, they were so different from their parents. Like if you know, these petromyzons are parasitic forms. They go and attach to the base of the larger fish with the help of their suctorial mouth, and they lead a parasitic life. But these larvae, the Ammocoetes, they are free living forms. They lived in burrows. They feed through their buccal funnels, just like that of Amphioxus. I hope you remember the feeding mechanism in Amphioxus, wherein you learnt about the oral herd, the oral cirri which surrounds this oral herd. Then the incoming water will bring the food and it enters into the buccal funnel, then to the vestibule, and then through the velum, the Haschek's pit, and then into the pharynx. So this Ammocoete larva, and one more thing, Amphioxus, it belongs to a Amphioxus is a cephalochordate, isn't it? So here the larva of petromyzon, which is an cyclostom, this is resembling a cephalochordata. So then we should be able to draw some conclusion based on this resemblance. So at the back of your mind, just keep that feeding mechanism of Amphioxus and their structures, and then it becomes easy for you to relate the structure of Ammocoete larva with that of Amphioxus. So because of their indifferent structure, that like Ammocoete larva does not resemble petromyzon exactly. So because of that, they were classified into a separate genus. But then later they learned that this is a larva of petromyzon, and hence it should be classified under cyclostomatans only. So at first, when these Ammocoete larvae hatch, they will be about 7 mm in length. They will be 7 millimeter in length, and they stay in the nest. And once they grow about 15 millimeter in long, they quit the nest and then they burrow in mud and sand in a quiet water. Each larva, it constructs and inhabits a V or a U-shaped tunnel. The larval period starts from 3 to 7 years, and according to species, during which they grow up to 170 mm, around 1.7 centimeters, and they become opaque. So when they were hatched, they were transparent larvae. Later they become opaque, and they exhibit a very longer larval period which extends from 3 to 7 years. The Ammocoete larva is of great importance because of its resemblance with that of a Cephalochordata, which is a protochordate. Now, when you observe the structure of this fully formed Ammocoete larva, it has got, so this is how it looks like. It's a transverse section of this Ammocoete larva. Its body is eel-like and it differs from the adult in several respects. It has a continuous single median dorsal fin running all along the length of the body. It is blind, it is toothless, and it is non-parasitic filter feeder. I hope you remember this term filter feeder because we discussed the same with Amphioxus as well. Feeding and respiration, they are like typically like that of Branchiostoma or the Amphioxus. It has no suctorial buccal funnel, but it has got a semicircular upper lip or the oral hood around the mouth. A mouth here, it has a transverse lower lip, and here it emerges from its burrows in the night and it feed on the bottom organic ooze containing unicellular algae and bacteria which are caught on the floor of the pharynx. How food is trapped in the pharynx? Because it has an endostyle which in turn secrete mucus, and this mucus secreted by the endostyle of the pharynx that traps all the food material that comes along with the water current. Now, our vellum is made up of muscular flaps. It here you can see in the diagram here you can see vellum, which is like a muscular flaps which in turn controls the movement of water. Controls in the sense it regulates the entry of water current into the pharynx, and then it continues posteriorly into esophagus. There are 7 pairs of gill pouches are present, each with a internal gill slit. You can count the number of pharyngeal gill bars here, which amounts to 7, and each one contains an external gill slit which opens into the exterior. The branchial basket supporting the pharyngeal wall alternately expands and contracts, which in turn helps to draw the water through the mouth into the pharynx and pumping out through the external gill slits. Thus, water circulation here is completely by muscular activity. Whereas in case of Amphioxus or Branchiostoma, if you remember, their cilia played a very important role in moving of the food particles of water all along the length of the alimentary canal. Here it is completely by muscular activity. Now, this is explained on the basis as an evolutionary development for engulfing larger pieces of food. Whereas in Amphioxus we said it prevents the oral cirri, they get tangled and form a sieve-like structure, thus preventing the entry of larger particles. Here, because of this muscular action, it can afford to take in larger particles of food also. Then in addition to this, liver, bile duct, gallbladder and protonephros are present in Ammocoete larva. Pericardial cavity enclosing heart, it connects with the coelom, and then paired eyes remain hidden under the skin and muscles, and hence we said this larva is blind, and it has got an unpaired median pineal eye which is well developed, but hypophacial and nasal sacs are poorly developed in case of Ammocoete larva. So all these points we have said already. Now this describes the structure of an ammocoete larva. Now let us understand what are the changes that it undergoes during the process of metamorphosis. Like once this larva takes the path of converting it into an adult, what are the changes that takes place? The main changes are, we said that this exhibits a prolonged larval life of about 3 to 7 years, and in these 7 years this ammocoetes undergo several changes in order to metamorphose into a adult form. The first one includes the oral hood get replaced by a suctorial buccal funnel with strong and sharp teeth, tongue and rounded mouth and complex musculature, and all these structures help them to lead a parasitic life. Endostyle changes into a thyroid gland below the pharynx. Velum becomes reduced to guard the opening of respiratory pharynx only. Then esophagus separates from the respiratory pharynx, which becomes like a blind sac. Gallbladder and bile duct, they disappear because there will be change in the feeding habit of this ammocoete larva. Gills develop into gill pouches. The pronephros get replaced by a mesonephros. Paired eyes become uncovered and functional. So an adult petromyzon is not blind, it's only the larva that is blind. So that gets uncovered and becomes functional. Single median nostril shifts to the top of head, and then nasohypophyseal sac grows backwards. The nasal sac becomes folded internally, and continuous dorsal fin becomes divided into two. Pericardial cavity becomes completely cut off from the coelom, and the spinal cord becomes dorsoventrally flattened. The skin color changes from yellow brown to mottled greenish brown. So after all these changes, after metamorphosis, the young lampreys swim down to the sea, where they remain for 3 or 4 years. Now where did all these changes occur? All these changes occurred in the river. So once they exhibit all these changes and when they become an adult, they want to go back to their parental habitat, wherein they swim back to the sea, and in the sea they remain for 3 to 4 years before reaching maturity. When they once again migrate, once they are matured, once they attain maturity, again they move from oceans to fresh water for the purpose of spawning, and once these spawn, they die. Okay, so gonads become mature at the time when adults return to river for spawning, and maybe because of the long journey that it undertakes without any feeding, once they spawn, they may not have enough of energy to go back to their to their original habitat. But there are few instances which says few of them migrate back and most of them die once they spawn. So this is how the metamorphosis occurs in ammocoete larva. Now what is the significance of this ammocoete larva? As we discussed, this ammocoete larva, it exhibits striking resemblance with that of Branchiostoma, which is a cephalochordate. So because of this, it shows that it's a very primitive and it gives a generalized vertebrate structure. Okay, so since it gives us an idea as to how a vertebrate structure look like, and because of this resemblance, it also acts as a connecting link between Amphioxus, which is a cephalochordate, and cyclostomes. Okay, this resemblance helps us to understand how maybe these two would have originated from a common ancestor, because here we can clearly know the morphological differences, morphological similarity between a cephalochordate, which is a protochordate, and a larva of a agnathan, right? So this resemblance tells us that these two could have originated from a common ancestor. So that's how the studying this Ammocoete larva plays an important role in understanding this similarities. I hope I have made it clear, and you all have understood the structure and metamorphosis of Ammocoete larva. Thank you for listening. These are the references from which the content has been taken. Thank you.